Good afternoon, and after food, some more food. Um, we are noting AI on the screen is noting down very carefully how many of you are sleeping. We know how many people will nod. So be careful when you sleep. We will have all your photographs put up outside because you slept in my session. All right. So what's the topic? The topic is deep dive into category management. Honestly, I haven't heard this word for a very, very long time. Many years ago, maybe a decade, several decades ago, I remember when I was with Spencer's, Food World, and Reliance Retail, Unilever actually constituted a category management team from Thailand. They brought in experts, and we did fundamental thinking around category management. And category management as a topic and as a subject is very well evolved in the West, in the advanced retail countries, which is Europe, South Africa, Australia, as well as in the US, Canada. They think about category management in a very structured manner. However, in the last decade or so, I think category management is almost dead in India. I have not heard that word being said in a meaningful way. It's all about thinking like a trader. The retailers today are selling as if they are only trading. I don't know where the customer is coming in. I don't know how many retailers really think and worry about the customer's needs. So I'm being upfront here, and I start with the premise that category management is dead. At the end of the session, we will leave it open to you to prove me wrong. But in the meanwhile, we noted down some aspects of category management which requires management, some aspects. And there are some 11 things that are actually there. Assortment management, pricing, operations, cost management, margin management, online versus offline, is it fair or foul? Category management, is it dead or alive? Inventory management challenges, demand forecasting, negative working capital, cost optimization, and premiumization, which Mr. Sravankumar will tell us how Q-Mart does their business. I'm going to throw some topics at the speakers, at the panelists here, and hear from them what they actually would like to say. We'll start with Nemisha, if that's okay with you. Yes. You have some 2 or 3 things that you would like to speak about. So I will give you one topic at a time of the 3, and we'll start with pricing, policy, and promotion, if that's okay with you. So pricing is, in my head, is like a double-edged sword. Well, while you cut it for the customer, it also cuts your own well-being. I remember reading a book about one of the airlines in the US, and the CEO's book, how they wrote about the airlines. They said that the one who's doing the pricing should have a room next to the CEO. Unfortunately, in India, I think it's a guy who's sitting in the basement who's deciding the selling price. All you want is just get sales up. But if price is that important, there has to be a science behind pricing, and that's been the biggest query in my mind. And Nemisha, if you could kindly tell us. So you have about 5 minutes or a few minutes more. Please explain to us what you think should be the pricing policy and promotions. What's the difference between the two? And how critical is it to be accurate on pricing?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. And what I'd like to do is, open up a little bit over here and to the audience over here, ask a very simple question. How many of you shop for grocery in your houses, for your houses? Please, can you put your hands up? I see around
almost
60%.
Everyone.
Yeah, around 60-70% of you do grocery shopping.
So which means all those who have not raised their hand are Swiggy's best friends.
Probably. How many of you, that was actually my next question, sir. So how many of us, have done our shopping on Instamart in the last 3 days?
Wow.
So that's the large amount. So a large amount, and I think some hands went up on the other side also. The fact of the matter today is we are playing, between two variables. One is time and the second is pricing. But I'd like to just turn the tables a little bit, and ask one more question. How many of you find that your grocery is coming to you more expensive than you should? In other words, you are paying more than you should. Please, can you raise hands? I saw maybe one or two, maybe 10%.
2 hands.
Yeah. So a large, handsome part of us, actually feel that we are paying the right price. And here's what plays in our minds, when we've done a lot of understanding on pricing, that a lot of us tend to get lost, a lot of us retailers, and I've been a retailer only for the last 2 years, and for the last other 20 years, I've been a manufacturer. I've worked in Cadbury for a long time. So here is the bit, a lot of us retailers tend to get, very sort of embroiled in Excel sheets and pricing. Isn't that what you visualize the pricing team to be? But it is not so. I think pricing is more about, human behavior. So a really good philosopher or a person who's really good at human values and, human understanding and human nature would probably do much better in pricing than, all of us combined. And that's my point of view. So here is the bottom line. The bottom line is customers don't look at pricing. Customers look at the value that we are providing to them. So all of you, who raised your hands are actually thinking, did I get the right value for my money? And I think that's, the turning point of, each one of the pricing managers, whether it is with More Retail, Reliance Retail, Magsons, Q-Mart, anybody. So, so having said that, I do think pricing plays a very strong role in retention of consumers. So you might come once, but if you find that the pricing of a single SKU, even a single SKU like ghee or apple or oranges that you buy from us, if it is perceived as expensive, then you shall not come again. So here's the bottom line. It's perceived value, rather than pricing. So that's my response.
I think that's a good point made. It's about the value that you feel you have got. But just to step back, Nemisha, you go back to what Porter said in his Competitive Advantage, which I still think is a very underread book amongst people who are involved in pricing.
Yes.
There are only two positions that people can take. Either you are a cost leader or you must have differentiation. If you don't have cost leadership, and cost leadership is not about reducing your selling price, it's about being able to buy cheaper. Whether strategically or geographically you can buy cheaper. If you have the cost advantage, you are a cost leader. For instance, DMart is a cost leader. All the others are pricing copiers. All the other people are copying who are trying to copy DMart are possibly only copying the selling price of DMart. Possibly they don't have their cost, and therefore what are you doing? You're actually giving away the margin that should be yours. So that's the play that you have between differentiation and actually cost. Avinash, I want to take the other side of the coin with you, which is really margin management, right? So, somebody told me about inventory. Having too much inventory is a sin, then out of stock is a crime. So really our lives as inventory managers is swinging between crime and a sin. Similarly, margin management is almost like that. You give it too cheap, it's a sin, and you don't make margin, it's a crime. So where do you stand with regard to margin management as a concept?
Yeah, thank you, Radha. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. So first thing, what we are taking as an approach in the margin management is the hygiene. So I think what we have seen that most of the margins are getting lost within the system only. If your system and processes are not right, then you lose your margins. So first thing, what we have seen, that there are most of the time you are selling the product which is lower than MRP because of the system issues, your system is not updated. So that is point number one where you normally lose margins. And cashier is not aware, they are doing that scanning and you get lost that. So normally updating the MRPs is very important. That we have seen firstly is very important tool to manage your margin. Second thing what we have also seen is markdown. So if you look at, like Radha, you have said, inventory management. So I think overall, if you manage your inventory, optimize inventory model is very important, because if you buy excess and the inventory model is not right, while you say that it will lead to a high sales, but then automatically there's an outcome also, it will lead to a lot of markdown where you lose your margins. So I think one hygiene factor, if you correct your hygiene factor, that I think is one important tool where you can efficiently manage your margin. Second point I would like to highlight is on the mix, category mix. So if you look at most of the model, start with the layout, how you design your store, and then it all about the overall mix of the store. So like for us, in a signature model, which is like an upgrade of Reliance Fresh, that what we are doing, we are focusing on F&V. So F&V, fruit and vegetables. Reliance Fresh as a model was earlier known for fruit and vegetable. Now what we are doing, we are strengthening that further and increasing the mix, giving more area to F&V, giving more the right quality of F&V. So overall F&V, because your margins is good, so overall it will help in your increasing the overall profitability of the store. Second thing, what we are also doing is a premiumization. So premiumization, like you already mentioned, that premium is the overall area, which if you start focusing on the premium article rather than selling, like we have seen most of the time, now customers are moving, like for example, I'll give you a breakfast example. Most of the customers are now moving from jams to mayonnaise, and mayonnaise they're moving to peanut butter. So I think what we are making more margin in peanut butter, more margin in almond butter. So rather than focusing on jam, we are focusing more drive on the peanut butter. And you see that there are a lot of companies now, a lot of big FMCG companies, they are entering into peanut butter as a category. And the second, which we have seen in the milk as a portfolio, normally if you look at the milk, regular Tetra Pak milk, you make lower margin. But what we have seen, there's a trend of almond milk which is going very up. So what we as a retailer are doing, promoting more almond milk. There's a separate bay which we have dedicated for a vegan, for a dairy alternative. So these categories will further strengthen your margin profitability. So I think that is point number 2. Third thing what I want to highlight is your stock turn. So while you say that Amul butter or your normally a pouch milk is giving a margin of only 5%, but that is more profitable than the inventory. If there's a product which is giving you 35% margin and you are stuck with the inventory. So I think stock rotation is very important. Our lower margin is not that, it is all about rupee gross margin, which is very important, rather than a percentage margin. So that is what we are focusing more on, stock turns. That is also an important tool to increase your margin and overall efficiently your margin management. Now fourth point, which already Nemisha has shared on the pricing tool. So I will just give you one example that how we are focusing on the pricing. Now as Radha mentioned that there's a cost leadership, like what value you are adding to the store. So what we are playing, we are saying that if suppose example, there's a SKU called head and shoulder. Now head and shoulder, 100 ml, 200 ml, 400 ml, all these total 3 SKU, if all the 3 SKU you are running on promotion, it will not make an impact. Because normally in the neighborhood grocery store, the biggest thing is your availability drive. That is what we are important, and the range building. And you can select one SKU, which you can take it as a big drive. Rather than giving pricing on all the SKU, it will only harm your margin and it will not increase your further sales. So more focus what we are doing as a retailer is more focusing on availability and more focusing on some key SKU, which we are taking that as a strong promotion tool. So it's a smart pricing which we have to do, because otherwise too much of pricing will overall hit your profitability. Last point which I want to add on the margin is your other income avenues that I think which most of the retailer are doing in terms of visibility, in terms of listing fees. But what we need to highlight that whenever we are doing any visibility, it also costs a stock of the inventory. So that we need to ensure that whenever we are working with the brand companies, we also have to work on, after the visibility is over, there has to be a liquidation model. Otherwise, it will, while one side of the area you will increase your GP2 margin, you increase your percentage profitability, but then the other side, if the stock is stuck, then you will lose that margin in the markdown. So these are all 5 areas which I see there's a potential to increase the margin, and that is how we are managing as a margin management. Thank you.
Well said, Avinash. Just a raise of hands. How many of you have ever worked on a DuPont model? Any of you heard of the DuPont model? I don't see many hands going up. Actually, if you want to see whether your retail outlet is doing well, try and use the DuPont model. And the DuPont model is almost an eye-opener for people who are running their businesses, particularly for retail, because it emphasizes on stock turns and how to, people don't sometimes realize the importance of stock turns, like you mentioned, Avinash, how important stock turns is to actually make ROI. Eventually, a company like Walmart, which is $600 billion, look at their PAT. It is not in double digit, but it is about the ROI that you make on the business. So try and think about the DuPont model. It may be a good way to look at how you're actually doing. H.G. Wells, in his book, The War of the Worlds, he wrote, the war is the death of the dead, the living over the dead. Price war is exactly the same. It's the victory over the dying over the dead. So, पहले आप मरोगे फिर मैं मरूंगा. So, but death is sure. Other than taxes, in the new era of pricing in this country, I think you have to add price as one of the reasons why there will be cause of death, because lower the price, lower your margins. I think we are just trying to use the easiest route out to get the customer to come and buy from you. Customer will love you as long as you're cheap. All right, so just bear that in mind. Prajay, you run a family business in Goa, and what a great place to have your business where you can stay in a holiday, the world's third best holiday location, and actually do your business. This is actually eating the cake and having it too. So you run a grocery retail chain called Magsons, and they've been there for a long time. He's the budding next generation of entrepreneurs. We have to make sure that he does well, and the only retail chain in Goa exists. So talk to us about what you believe is your concerns with regard to demand management.
Sir, as you rightly mentioned very recently in an interview, success in supply chain is success in grocery. And as grocery first retailers, it's extremely important that the supply chain, which segs into demand forecasting, is extremely robust. Today, the tech teams, or the ones that build the algorithms that go into demand forecasting, are extremely crucial part of the entire organization. They can't just be independent tech providers or solution providers anymore, but rather they have to understand each and every variable of the operations in order to provide holistic solutions. Multivariate forecasting is becoming extremely important, something that we've seen. In retail, we know there are certain very clear causal links. For example, in the summer, ice cream sales go up. On hot days, things like cold beverages go up. How do algorithms incorporate all these real world data to provide more accurate forecasting? For example, a social media influencer could launch a new trend and suddenly demand for a new shampoo goes up, or demand for a new personal care product goes up. How do algorithms take care of these real world data? That is extremely important. AI and ML are used as buzzwords a lot, but I feel this is really an ML first task where large sets of data are taken, and very importantly, a lot of the noise is taken away from the data through these algorithms. You kind of filter out the invalid and outlier data through these models. So just having a really good understanding, maybe not the technical understanding of how these things work, but at least from a managerial perspective, understanding the business perspective, that then guides the tech team to build very clear algorithms. Demand forecasting is not just forecasting the amount of products that you need to fill the shelves. Demand forecasting now is increasingly spreading across other aspects of forecasting, because we've had so many presentations over the last couple of days on omni-channel. So omni-channel again is now taking customer data, offline data and online data, and kind of putting it together. Because offline retailers, they really don't know who their customer is. They know what they are selling, but they don't know really who's buying that. Online customers, you have a lot more data on them. You'd probably have their demographic data, how much they are buying, what they are buying, and you can personalize your demand algorithms towards them. So kind of mixing the two together and having the right model that will personalize demand forecasting for each customer set is also getting extremely important. Uh, Without the right personalization forecast, you try to put a one-size-fits-all algorithm to demand forecasting, and that's never going to work. It also segs into the number of delivery boys that you need, the warehousing planogramming. During the summer months, the warehousing planogramming is very different from the winter months. During seasonality times, planogramming changes, the number of shifts for staff changes. So demand forecasting really now is incorporating a lot many other aspects just than how much do I order.
No, absolutely. I think demand forecasting is a science and an art both. And there are universities in the US who do this for a living. They work with all the retailers. They do the demand forecasting models for them. And I think profit or loss will be got or lost if depending on how good you are at demand forecasting. I want to go over to Sravankumar now from Q-Mart. And your founder, Vijay, is a very dear friend of mine for many, many years. And while the whole country was going towards lower prices, Q-Mart started going to the higher prices because they are the one store which has a lot of imported products. They don't sell it cheap, but they attract a certain layer of customers who really like what Q-Mart offers in Hyderabad. They're based out of Hyderabad. While I've not been Vijay's great buddy, while golf is his passion as well, but running a Q-Mart store is a bigger passion for him, I'm sure. Has done very well. I want you to tell us something about your ideas of pricing and premiumization and where Q-Mart stands today in a very competitive Hyderabad market.
We are a destination for many products in Hyderabad. We are a destination for many products in Hyderabad, cheeses, exotic fruits, world foods, and related to the non-food category also, we carry many of the imported products from the crockery, cutlery, and we don't give any discounts and offers. We sell it on MRP only. And whenever there is a possibility, we sample the product instead of giving it 1+1 or pushing it by dropping the prices. That's it.
Sure, I think that's are your stores profitable?
Yes, profitable.
Then you're the first store to actually turn profitable. I'm not sure how many grocery stores are profitable in that sense. We've got 5 minutes, so I'm a great one for actually getting some feedback from the audience. I will open it to the audience. If we still have time, I'll come back to the panel. We have several other questions to do. But just before I open it to the audience, the retail system should be treated like an ecosystem. It should be treated like either the Amazon forest or your own human body, where things adjust on their own. And if you want to make money, you got to be good at several things at the same time, well optimized, and everything will start from your own concept of what store you want to run. What do you want your store to be? Do you want it to be a discounter, or like Q-Mart, you want to be a premium? According to that, you need to be true. You cannot be everything to everybody. You can have in the same company several formats, but you got to be true to your promise. I am not seeing that many stores in this country are being true to their promise. I'm going to leave it to the audience for a few questions. If you still have time, then I will come back to the panel, but otherwise, any question that you may have. Anyone in the audience? Yes. Were we not supposed to ask questions, or they were not supposed to ask questions? Yeah, you thought the hall will be empty after lunch. But hopefully they are there in mind and spirit. Yes, sir.
Hi. So first and foremost, I think extremely interesting insights and sessions, right? So I come from HR background. I had HR for FMCG, beauty personal care company. From the time the focus has shifted to profitability, supply chain has somehow become the most important team in the room, right? Because suddenly the conversation moved from growth to liquidity, and suddenly cash flow is more important than growth at all costs. Now, it's how do you manage the whole cycle where the whole economy works on top line, bottom line cycle. How do you ensure this kind of mindset and the things we are talking about continues even when this phase is not there? Because I think what lands up happening is we are at this place. A large part of it is because the largest voice in the room was not supply. It was still an enabling function from a strategic function. As leaders doing this, how do you cope with it and how do you see this changing in the future?
Are you asking whether in the context of liquidity, cash flow?
Yes, so with focus on profitability, these questions become important. But when it's last 2 years, when it was growth at all costs, maybe how much inventory was never a question.
So I'll just give a quick answer, then I'll open it out to whoever wants to answer. I think we have to understand one thing very clearly. Profitability and cash flow are like two rails of a train. They may never meet. You can have a company which has great profitability, can have no cash. Just think about it. You can have 50% margin, but you have no cash to pay salaries. Or you can have a cash flow comfort, but with very low margins. So I think these are independent variables. Cash flow and margin, don't confuse the two. They are separate. Different things drive cash flow, different things drive margin. You can have a company which is extremely profitable, but will close down if they don't have cash to. Cash flow is a matter of terms of trade with your supplier and the inventory you hold. And this is what the Bania understands very, very well. The ITC cigarette shop, he borrows at 200% interest. In the morning, he sells a cigarette and returns that interest at the end of the day. It is about moving your stock 360 times a year. I am exaggerating to make a point. But the point is, if you move your stock within credit period of the supplier, negotiate a higher credit period, but move it 3 times and 4 times, you will make more money, you will actually make more cash. Anyone else wants to?
I think I just want to add on the negative working capital. So I think that is what you have summarized is at a negative working capital. So cash flow management is all about working in a negative working capital. It might be also good, but sometimes it is also not an efficient tool to manage your entire cash flow. But most of the retailers, especially in the grocery trade, they are working on a negative working capital, and you use your trade terms like that where you sold the inventory before that and you use that cash flow accordingly.
I think, if you're a grocery company, you have to work on negative working capital. May not sound very nice, but you're working with vendors' money. But that's the way grocery works. Anyone else? Any other question? Yes, we have a question there. Yes.
Yeah.
It's on now.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to actually talk about if we could just deep dive into the top 5 costs in running grocery retail.
The top 5?
Yeah. So that's rent, utility, staff, marketing, and then finally damages and expiry. If we could get some broad understanding as to what should be good metrics that we should target, which could make a grocery chain retail. Like you said, a lot of them aren't, and we should know what we should do to hopefully get there.
I think you'll have to take it offline because it's a big topic and a very important topic. There are different matrices that you will make anyway. The most important matrix is EBIT at store level. Whatever you do, if your EBIT at store level is great, there's somebody who's paying 40 rupees rent, another guy's paying 10 rupees rent, you're making money, that's the metric. But I'm exaggerating again to make a point. But I think these are all independent variables because in grocery retail, the most important points, which is your labor cost, your rental, and your power, these are not in the hands of the retailer. You cannot change it. Every year it keeps going up. But because 75% of whatever we sell in a store is FMCG and there is an MRP product, the FMCG companies don't care a damn whether the retailer lives or dies. they will not increase the MRP even if my cost goes up. So I remember opening the first retail store way back in 1996. That time, the first store, the rental was 15 rupees per square foot. That same store today is 190 rupees per square foot. But the price of Lux, the basic margin on invoice is still 8.44%. So that's my theory. There is a hegemony which FMCG companies have against the grocery. I'm saying it in an open forum, but that's the truth. That it's difficult to make money out of FMCG companies because they fixed your margin as per the Kirana shop. It's about your buying power and how you manage that. I think we don't have time. I already have a gun being pointed at. Yes, I think the own brand intention, at least the intent to have your own brand is there. People want to substitute FMCG categories with your own brand. But let me tell you, you got to be very, very clever to run your own brand because it is more expensive running your own brand than you're actually thinking. But at some point of time, you got to break this hegemony that you can only make money if you sell FMCG brands. We have to get out of it. And I think FMCG companies have to adopt category management. I think if all stakeholders have to actually succeed. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, we have several more questions, but I think the time is up, I'm told. But is there something? You want to make a point, Nemisha?
Yeah, is the time up? Do we have a minute? Okay, all right. So I just wanted to ask you, where are you from? Can you identify yourself? If you're loud, I'll be able to hear you. Yeah, but which organization and industry?
So I run a organic food manufacturing and growing business.
Okay.
And we supply to retailers.
Okay.
So I wanted to understand from the other side what we should offer and that's basically.
Yeah. To what KR sir already said, I'm going to add 1 or 2 points. You run an organic business, isn't it? So let me ask this question to the entire group. If you go to your kitchen today, and you see products, in your kitchen, you will notice, or let me just ask a question, how many, products in the kitchen are actually FMCG as a percentage and non-FMCG? Anybody who says that FMCG is 80%, please raise your hands. Anybody who says FMCG is 80% of your kitchen? Okay. You mean packaged products. I would like to say packaged products. FMCG meaning koi bhi packaged products. Anybody saying 60% plus? A large part of you are saying that in your kitchen, 60% plus is FMCG. Let me correct, our understanding. Today, if you go back to your kitchen, packaged products, which, have an MRP behind it, are just 42% of your kitchen. 60% of your spends, go into staples, go into fruits and vegetables. 60% of our sale also largely is non-MRP products. That essentially means that, sir, you run an organic foods company. So a lot of margin and a lot of how one creates margin and hence cash flow is dependent on how successful is a retailer in selling staples, in selling, as Avinash was talking about, fruits and vegetables. So, a lot of people over here that I have met are, have their own organic business or, sort of are getting into the D2C space. I encourage, all of you, I think, to come forth and, create an omni-channel strategy, because I do think that it will be a win-win situation, across the board. And that's all I had to say. Thank you, Ghia.
Thank you very much, everyone. And great audience for staying awake. We would have done a great job if you stayed awake. Thank you very much.